Senator Weicker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, to the Surgeon General, I'd like to say that I think this report of yours on AIDS is an outstanding piece of work. Since this is being carried across the country, I wonder if you might tell the average citizen how he can or she can obtain a copy of this report.
Well, they can write to the Public Health Service and receive this, and I'll see if I can find a number here. A local Red Cross will supply it. The number you could call in Washington is 202-245-6867, and we have another line which I don't see here. I'm sorry. I don't think it's in this. But I don't think you want to call the hotline about this because that's more for information on the disease itself.
Well, I would recommend, indeed, if there's any of the Surgeon General staff here that can supply the mailing address for a request, I wish they would do so, because I think that no one book encapsulates the problem, and there is no final solution, but certainly those steps that can be taken as a matter of precaution better than this work. And I also want to read at the conclusion of the Surgeon General's opening letter, and I might add this letter, as he indicated, and it's clearly understood when you read it, was not written by any staff member. It was written by the Surgeon General. And he says, at the beginning of the AIDS epidemic, many Americans had little sympathy for people with AIDS. The feeling was that somehow people from certain groups, quote, deserved, end of quote, their illness. Let us put those feelings behind us. We are fighting a disease, not people. And those who are already afflicted are sick people and need our care, as do all sick patients. I just want to say, both in terms of its science and in terms of its editorializing, this is one hell of a good piece of work. Dr. Wyndham, I'm going to ask some questions that I realize might be a little contentious, but I think they're deserving of some response. I want to point out also to all those attending the hearing that the cooperation which Dr. Wyndham, as the Assistant Secretary of Health, has given to this center, indeed to the Appropriations Committee, has just been outstanding. It was largely through his efforts that I was able to achieve additional funding for the clinical trials of AZT on the floor of the Senate last year. And he has been totally responsive to any matter that is raised before him. And I express that as a matter of our personal relationship rather than the budgets, which I plan now to discuss for a minute, knowing full well that those budgets are not devised by you, but probably more devised in OMB than they are at HHS.
Do you feel like you're being battered up before the cooking? Do you think you're being warmed up?
Right. No, this is a good man. I'm not going to get in a fight with him, but I do say that the final determination of our commitment to any problem in this nation is the budget. It is a very unerring, it's an apolitical document. It is not philosophical. The dollars and cents are there. Now you can make all the statements that you want, but when finally it's said and done, comes down, are you going to put your dollars out there for the problem? Senator Kennedy correctly raised the problem that we have here in this year's budget. It is that in the request of the administration for NIH, number one, they have asked that $334 million in research funds be delayed from FY87 to FY88. And then they tack on that 334 onto FY88. So really what you're talking about, since I dare say the delay will not be approved by the Congress, is that there is going to be roughly a $600 million reduction in NIH funding per the administration request of 88. Again, I have to repeat, I would rather doubt that that is going to be manifested by the Congress. But it proves to be a real problem insofar as the public is concerned. And you can't go ahead and abandon your basic research. I use as an example, I'm a novice in this thing. I'm not a doctor. I never took any science courses. They were far too tough when I was in college. When I was given my choice of a science course at Yale, I took what was known as Rocks and Stars, which was geology and astronomy. I stood away from anything else, so I don't pretend to be an expert. But when I first joined the committee, for example, progress was being made in conquering the herpes virus. And you might think that this would be in the infectious diseases area, sexual disease, et cetera. Actually, the greatest progress against the virus that was made over at NIH was in the Dental Institute. And I only use that as an example that we don't know where the breakthrough is going to come from. And we can't abandon the funds that go to basic research, as clearly is evidenced by the administration's budget. I'm going to use their own words, where they say, of this total amount, $334 million is derived from a proposal to extend the availability of a portion of 87 research funds. And then they say $5,535 million in new budget authority. Again, they further on, to maintain a balanced program, at the same time respond to the public demand for deficit control. The NIH proposed to extend the availability of $334 million in 87 appropriations, defer the spending of this amount until 1988. And then it says in the 87 appropriation, this is the administration's words, the 87 appropriation provided a 17% increase in research funding over 86. Such a large increase, especially in research project grants, cannot be sustained without significant displacement of other activities. Now, this just isn't so. And indeed, I've got to say to you that not only do I think there should be additional funding for AIDS, but we should continue the progress that we've made insofar as the basic research across the boards accomplished by NIH and through the various grant programs, and i.e. among the various medical schools, universities of this nation. And especially, I might add, with something, to use the common parlance, as flaky as the AIDS virus, where you don't know what's going to come next or where it's going to come from. And I know this is tough, and Dr. Wyndham, I don't know if you and I have had a budget or an appropriations session yet, but I've gone through this for 6 years where it's very difficult to elicit from the men of science, which you are, the responses that have sort of, the accurate response when indeed you've had numbers rammed down your throat, which are a political document rather than a scientific document. But maybe you read the numbers different than I do, but in the if indeed the administration 88 request does not include a delay of 87 funds, is it true that it will be $600 million less for NIH than in 87?
Thank you, Senator, for the comments at the beginning and also at the end. And I want you to know that we are very pleased to work with you and cooperate in these efforts. Now, the question you asked specifically is, will it be the decrease? What we're doing is asking that there be 700 less new grants awarded this year. Now, of that, still, they believe 5,600 new grants, new awards, new research projects to be granted. And the reason we are cutting down in that amount is to take that $334 million and to transfer it over to the next year. This does not mean that any of the current research projects that are ongoing will be decreased or stopped. And as you mentioned, it's true that some 65% estimated of research that's done in one area, something spins off to the other, like you mentioned in herpes. Those basic research programs are continuing. So we have to look at the new awarded program requests of 5,600 and look at those in the priority. And therefore, we're taking the 63 coming down to 56, but still taking in priority, and AIDS, because of its scourge, because of its impact on the country, have had to give priority to that. And so we will have to level off somewhat, but the total grants are still high,
Okay.
highest ever.
Fair enough, and I don't dispute exactly what you've said, but please, everybody understand, this then is saying that within the scientific challenges to this nation, AIDS is a priority. I come from the point of view that among the priorities of the nation as a whole, science is a priority, and that's where this falls between the cracks as compared to other endeavors of the government where there are substantial increases. One last question to either you or both, Dr. Cooper, both. In the Surgeon General's report on AIDS, you state that in the year 1991, we're only talking 4 years from An estimated 145,000 patients with AIDS will need health and supportive services at a total cost of between $8 and $16 billion. Now, mind you, I've just been talking about a $5 billion NIH budget for '88. We're talking, according to the Surgeon General, of $8 to $16 billion in health and supportive services in 1991. Have any of you got any idea as to how we intend to start to marshal our resources to pay for this tab? And has the administration been so notified that this problem is coming over the hill?
I'd be glad to defer to Dr. Winterbeck.
Yes, sir, it is coming over the hill and from the hill. We are concerned about this, and that estimation is based upon the information we know today.
Right.
And that's all we can use and to project. And with the mechanism in place and the means by which we have to get all sorts of cooperation, projects locally, local communities to help be a part of dealing with the disease and managing it, we need to, and we are planning to expend the money and project forward and work toward that goal.
Well, I thank you very much.
Senator Weicker, I have the information you requested about
Dr.
how to
Coop,
obtain
I
this.
wish you would give that information.
For a free copy of the Surgeon General's report on AIDS, one could write to AIDS, Post Office Box 14252, that's 14252, Washington, D.C. 20044. And by telephone, call either one of these 800 numbers, 800-443-0366 or 800-342-AIDS.
I just want to repeat on this. Again, this is the Surgeon General's report on AIDS. It should be in every home in this nation. And I would ask Dr. Coop once again to give the mailing address and the phone number in order to get a copy of this report.
The mailing address for a free copy of the Surgeon General's report on AIDS is AIDS, Post Office Box 14252, Washington, D.C. 20044. And the two telephone numbers, 800-443-0366 or 800-342-AIDS.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.